about percentages because we've discussed these at City Matters meeting, and the information has bin released. We're all comfortable about that information being released. We get 20% of the ticket allocation that the club get, the supporters club get 20% for us to distribute out amongst our members, official members of the supporters club. That's not changed. That allocation has been in place for a considerable number of years. Listen, I've been General Secretary for 20 years this year, and we've always had 20%. The only difference now, to a certain extent, is there was a time, believe it or not, that we used to get 20% and think, how are we going to get rid of them? Seriously. And now we get 20% and think, crikey, that's going to be difficult a hard job to actually do 20% and make everybody feel as if they've got a share. And that is the difference. People look from the outside in and think that we're taking advantage of the system. We're not. It's a little bit like rough and smooth. You know, it's like loyalty points. We talked about it at the City Matters meeting the other night, Matty. Loyalty points were originally introduced by the club to try and encourage to buy tickets when the club couldn't sell them. We have not always been a football club that gets an allocation of away tickets and people are banging on the windows to buy them. There was a point when, as good as our point has been, that if you get an allocation of away tickets and you take the full allocation, the club are obligated that if they take the full allocation, that even if they don't sell them to their supporters, they have to pay for them. And we're talking at a time when tickets were £30. We're talking at a time when away tickets could have been 40, 50, 65. So loyalty points were actually introduced by the club at the time to try and encourage people to buy tickets, to get loyalty points, just in case at one point in the next millennium we might get to Wembley. That's how bad it used to be at one time. And if we do get to Wembley, then if you've got loyalty points, you'll get a ticket. So things do change overnight. But one thing that hasn't changed is that we've had the 20% for 20, 30 years, and we've still got it now. The Supporters Club as an organisation, we're in our 70th year. We've supported the club through all of that period of time. We get some benefit from that now. But, you know, there were periods of time under Peter Swales. We used to have a little office at Main Road. You remember it well, where we had an office that we actually used to use to sell travel club thing. We bought that little office off the club under Peter Swales, and we paid £25,000 for that. And the reason we paid £25,000 for that little office is the club were desperate for the money. Now, when Main Road was sold and we moved to the new stadium, nobody came to the Supporters Club and said, that little bit of office that you've got there, we know that you paid £25,000 for that. So I tell you what we'll do is we'll give you the 25 grand back. They didn't give us anything for that. But that's a little bit like the rough and the smooth of it. We didn't mind because we had a fantastic relationship with the club. Do I understand why people ask the question, why do the supporters get an allocation? Yeah, I do sort of understand why they ask that question. The only way I can answer it is, it's a little bit historical. It's a little bit to repay the loyalty that we've shown to the club over the years. The only slight difference is, to a certain extent, is season card holders get 40%. Is it 40%? 60%. Yeah. 60%. Now, the number of season card holders hasn't really changed. We've had 40,000 season card holders for a considerable while. When we got 20%, originally, we probably had 7,000 members of the Supporters Club and 40 branches. Now we've got over 280 branches worldwide. We've got over 20,000 members. So the reality is that our 20% has to be shared amongst a much bigger figure than originally it had to. We are very lucky. You know, we've built up a great relationship with the football club over the years, and we're lucky that we're still in a position that we have that relationship. But I don't honestly think that we're getting anything that we don't deserve. People would, of course, say, well, I would think that because I'm the General Secretary. But I honestly think that we are a fantastic football club. We've got a great relationship with our fan base. And even when the new owners came in, they talk about the history of the football club. and not forgetting that history. And I think it's very good that no matter what's happened at the football club, they've still remembered the part that the supporters club have played with them over the years. 70 years we've been going this year. It's not a newfangled thing, that's suddenly been set up by a few people. Well, let's form a supporters club so we can get some tickets. No, we've been going 70 years.
Well, everything you're saying makes complete sense, but I am going to challenge it.
Absolutely.
It's my job, right? So on behalf of some supporters, they would say, we hear about you've talked about 280 now as the number of branches, and for example, one new one, and I don't mean to single them out.
No, you can.
Using them as an example, because I know they've just literally started doing a Twitter account and followed me and everything, so I've noticed them. I think there's one in Jersey, I think it's called New Jersey Blues or something.
Oh, in America,
yeah. And I don't know anything about this now, but the sceptics on the outside would say, all you do now to get a ticket, if you can't get one, is create a new supporters club like this New Jersey one, and they'll suddenly now be entitled to 2 tickets whenever they want, because they'll get them through the supporters club. How's that fair when I have been going for the last 50 years, home and away, blah, 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 and some person from New Jersey gets a ticket? So what do you say to those people?
Well, it's very... Listen...
I don't mean that against New Jersey.
No.
Don't.
But I'm glad I thought about that earlier. I'm quite glad you've raised that question, really. Listen, the majority of the supporters club branches that we open these days are overseas branches. More than 50% of our branches now are overseas. And in fact, I made a little list earlier of these are the areas in which we've recently opened supporters club branches. India, China, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq, United States, Canada, Australia, Chile, South Africa, Japan, Bulgaria, Egypt, Cyprus, Brazil, Peru, Mexico. Those branches are being opened all the time. The reality is, those branches are not opening so they can get tickets. It's very, very rare that an overseas branch wants a ticket for an away game. If they do want a ticket, the chances are that they'll want a ticket for a home game. Because if you're a City fan and you live abroad, the first thing you want to do is to come to the Etihad. In the nicest way, you don't want to go to the Olympic Stadium. You don't want to go to the Emirates. You don't want to go to Anfield. You might want to do that at some stage in the future, but what you want to do is to go to the Etihad. And the reality is, it's easier to get a ticket for a home game than it is for an away one. So very, very few of the international branches that open ask for away tickets. Where they do, we then become quite particular about who's asking for them, because of course what we don't want to happen, and this has happened, which is why we check this, what we don't want to happen is somebody to open up a supporters club branch in New Mexico, shall we say, and then somebody who lives in Blakely decides to join the New Mexico branch.
I've already also heard people saying that happens.
And can I say it hasn't happened in the past? It has happened in the past. And you can't spot it the first time round, because actually I might get a request from Japan for 2 tickets for an away game, and if things work out, you'll allocate the tickets. As a one-off, it can happen. What becomes a little bit suspicious is then Japan asks for a ticket for the next away game, and then we start to check into it, and we ask them a question, who are these tickets for? Oh, well, it's one of our UK-based support. That supply line is stopped straight away. So we do try and investigate as much as we possibly can and try and stop that happening. And we do warn our branches that they need to be aware that they shouldn't start to accept applications from overseas members who then want them to ask for tickets on their behalf. We try and police it as much as we possibly can. It's not absolutely watertight, but we do as much as we possibly can, remembering that we're all volunteers as well. We've got our own jobs to do, and I've got 280 branches plus that I need to check that are they honestly asking for tickets for members who are living in the particular area that the branch has been set up. So.